Dangerous Hurricane Beryl is headed towards the Windward Islands. Good morning, I'm Mike Nasa with this 5 a.m. video update. It is the first day of July, but you wouldn't know it out there in the Atlantic Basin as we have the third named storm making landfall in Mexico and the first major hurricane heading into the Windward Islands. There's the satellite of Hurricane Beryl. It has undergone an eye wall replacement cycle where the little eye shrinks and dissipates and a new larger eye takes shape. And it's still in the cycle right now, and that has weakened the hurricane down to a Category 3, thankfully, but it has also expanded it spatially in size, so the area of impact in the Windward Islands will be larger than what it was before. Now here's the latest on Hurricane Beryl as of 5 a.m. Eastern Time. It was at 11.7 north, 59.9 west. Winds were 120 miles per hour. It had been 130 miles per hour. So it's 10 miles an hour weaker than it was. And the pressure is still in the 960s, around 965 millibars. We should have another Air Force plane flying around there later today. Maybe a NOAA plane as well. We'll get some more data like we have for the last 24 hours. As it moves to the west at 20, it's been stair-stepping west, west-northwest, west-west-northwest. It should eventually begin to move more west-northwest and then eventually bend back towards the west in the general direction of the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico or even Belize, but that's not until the weekend comes around. Right now we have to deal with it in the Windward Islands. I did want to note we have hurricane warnings out for Barbados, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, the Grenadines, Grenada, as well as Tobago. Tobago, you are very close to the hurricane force winds right now. And we also have tropical storm warnings, tropical storm watches rather, in effect here for the southern coastline of Haiti and the southern coastline of the Dominican Republic, because the hurricane is going to pull west-northwest and those winds could get close to that area of Hispaniola. Now, there's good news and bad news. The good news is we were a Category 4 right here, and now we're a Category 3 right here. In fact, there's some indication it weakened a little further than that, but now it's starting to look a little bit better organized, so the National Hurricane Center is keeping it at 120. So you might think, well, good, we're still a major hurricane, but we're lower than we were compared to before. Yes, that's true, but in expanding its eye wall, you now expand the wind field. So while yesterday hurricane force winds only extended out, 20 miles? Now they're larger. Now it's getting to be closer to 40 miles. And that increases the area that will be impacted by hurricane winds. And that's worse for little islands like this because when it was a tight hurricane, there was some hope that maybe that core wouldn't go over or near any of the islands. It could kind of cut through. But with these hurricane force winds, somebody's going to get walloped, and it's not going to be good. Here's the radar out of Barbados, and this is a good example of an eye wall replacement cycle. Remember, last night and throughout the day on Sunday, we had that tight little eye, and it's now a fat donut. It has completed, it looks like it's completed, that eye wall replacement cycle, and so now the eye wall, those hurricane winds of Category 3 intensity are within that circle I just drew, and that's a much larger area spatially to impact islands. Now, looking at that map, Tobago, you're right here, so you are very close to the outer edge of the winds of hurricane force, so don't be surprised if hurricane winds start on Tobago in the next couple of hours throughout the morning. And then here is Grenada, the Grenadines to the north, and then that is St. Vincent. St. Vincent, it would really have to bend north to go directly over you, but man, Grenada is right squarely in the path. So Tobago, you're very, very close. You're probably going to get some hurricane winds. St. Vincent, you're close as well to the north. But really, Grenada and the Grenadines here are squarely in the path of this dangerous major hurricane Beryl. Here's the water vapor imagery, and obviously it looks like the eye is kind of not as well defined as it was in earlier images as it pops out a newer, larger eye. We could actually see it strengthen again, so don't be surprised if it goes back up to a Category 4. I mentioned yesterday Hurricane Ivan 20 years ago, the last really nasty hurricane to hit Grenada, even though Hurricane Emily smacked them in 2005. Ivan was a Category 4, then it weakened to a 2, and then it strengthened back to a 4 and then a 5 in the Caribbean Sea. So even though it was a 3 when it went over the Windward Islands, like Hurricane Beryl is right now, it was re-strengthening. And a strengthening hurricane is worse than one that is holding steady or weakening, because that means those strong winds are bursting to the surface. And remember, in the higher elevations of some of these mountainous islands, the winds could be 30% stronger than they would be normally. So again, we're going to watch as this hurricane moves into the Caribbean. It could be a Category 4 again, although it will encounter some wind shear. In fact, looking at the wind shear map right now, there is some wind shear out ahead of it. So this environment it has is good right now, but it won't last forever. Although down the road, it's unknown if it's going to be in a favorable environment in the Western Caribbean or the Gulf of Mexico. It's too far out. The shear tendency map shows that better. It's good over here, it's good in the Western Caribbean and the Gulf, but it's got to get through this area here of high wind shear before it can do anything. So we're going to watch as time goes by. The model guidance, like the National Hurricane Center said in their 5 a.m. discussion, the European model seems pretty straightforward, bending it west towards the Yucatan. There has been a southern adjustment. However, notice some of the models here start to bend it more north and northwest, maybe towards a weakness. We don't know yet. The GFS model's kind of the same thing. They bend it way west, and then some of them start to pull it a little more to the northwest. I would think it's probably going to head more in this direction and not as far north. But again, watching these models is just too far out. Right now, we could focus on areas all the way up to Jamaica and the Western Caribbean. But anything beyond that, we don't know how strong it'll be or where exactly it will go. It could end up weaker and head right into Mexico like Alberto and Chris, or it could be pulled more northwest. We just don't know. Right now, the focus is going to be on the impacts to the islands. Tropical Storm Chris made landfall in Mexico, but it is still a tropical storm. Overnight, it stayed a tropical storm, winds gusting very strong. It's 40 miles per hour, moving west at 12, and it's at 20.1 north, 97.2 west. It is a landfalling tropical storm, very short-lived, but nonetheless still have tropical storm winds occurring there, as we have a tropical storm warning in effect from Cabo Rojo to Puerto Veracruz along the Mexican coastline. Looking at the satellite imagery of Tropical Storm Chris, you can see why it's still a tropical storm. We have heavy, heavy weather right along the coastline there in the Bay of Campeche, and there are tropical storm force winds within some of this weather impacting the coastal region. Now, that should eventually decrease as the system weakens, but the heavy rain will not, and that's going to pool in. Look at this rainfall totals, 8 inches plus locally in Veracruz, and then areas up further to the north and northwest, we're talking about 10, 12 inches plus. So there is heavy rain and a flood threat there with Tropical Storm Chris. Elsewhere in the tropics, you'd never know it's July 1st. You would think it's September 1st with this kind of map. We have Chris, we have Beryl. We have another area that we've been watching. This is a 70% chance of tropical cyclone formation in the next week. And that's showers and thunderstorms about 1,000 miles west-southwest of the Cabo Verde Islands, headed towards the west-northwest in the general direction of the Lesser Antilles where Beryl has headed. And when we take a look at the satellite imagery here, this is the wave we're watching. It should organize into a tropical depression or a tropical storm the next few days and head to the west-northwest. And look at this beautiful wave here, very ominous looking shape to it, leaving Africa. I don't see anything there yet, but watch as it moves towards the west, just in case with the way this hurricane season's been. The system in the Atlantic, here's the European model. They show it generally weak and headed towards the west-northwest. The GFS also keeps it as nothing more mostly than a tropical storm as it heads in the general direction of the central and western Caribbean. So again, this one doesn't look like it's going to be a strong hurricane for the islands, but keep an eye on it anyways, because we saw what happened with this thing. This is Hurricane Beryl, a major hurricane about to make landfall in some of the islands of the Windwards. If you are in the Windward Islands, I know there have been people who have viewed this video who live down there in Trinidad, Tobago, Grenada, St. Vincent, Barbados. If you can still see this update, if you have power, hunker down, stay away from the water. Make sure that if you are in the strongest part of the hurricane and you're trapped in your house, make sure you go to an interior room. If need be, go into a bathtub, put a mattress over you, and just wait this one out. It's moving at 20 miles per hour, so it's not a slow mover. Hopefully we can get it out. But if you're in areas there of Tobago and Grenada, the Grenadines, St. Vincent in particular, Grenada, you guys really, really need to hunker down with the landfall of a major hurricane, Hurricane Beryl. Stay tuned. I'm Mike Naso. I'll be back with further updates throughout the day as Hurricane Beryl slams into the Windward Islands.